For decades, the American berry industry operated on a single, uncontested principle: sweetness sells. The USDA backed it. Driscoll's, which controls roughly 35% of the entire U.S. strawberry market, built its entire commercial model around it. Cornell University's small fruit breeding program published variety trials in 1987, 1994, and 2009, all pointing the same direction: bigger sugar content, longer shelf life, higher yield per acre. The American Frozen Food Institute endorsed it. The grocery retail lobby funded the research that confirmed it. That consensus is gone. In 2021, a team at the University of California, Davis published genomic sequencing data across 75 commercially grown strawberry varieties and found that the highest sugar varieties consistently scored lowest on aroma compound complexity, meaning the strawberries Americans were told were the best tasted, by measurable chemical standard, the least like strawberries. The industry had optimized flavor out of the fruit while calling it progress. Albion was never supposed to dominate American farmers' markets. It was bred in 2004 at UC Davis specifically to replace Camarosa, a variety that had itself replaced Chandler in the mid-1990s, and the whole project was funded by the California Strawberry Commission, with one stated goal: day neutrality. But the variety that replaced Albion on restaurant menus at places like 11 Madison Park and the French Laundry turned out to still be Albion, just grown differently. UC Davis released Albion in 2004 after 14 years of crossbreeding trials. It produces fruit for 8 to 9 months of the year rather than the standard 6-week spring window, which is why it now accounts for roughly 22% of California's 38,000 acres of commercial strawberry production. The California Strawberry Commission, a state-chartered marketing order funded by a mandatory levy on every flat of strawberries sold, promoted Albion aggressively through the 2000s, not primarily because of flavor, but because its extended season meant fewer weeks of market gap. The economic logic was supply chain stability, not consumer experience. Retailers could stock California strawberries in October, rather than switching to Florida or Mexico. The Commission's own 2007 annual report described Albion's flavor profile as acceptable across all market segments. Not exceptional, acceptable. In 1919, a strawberry shortage in the Midwest contributed to social unrest in labor camps along the Great Lakes. Migrant workers who had been promised strawberry-picking wages arrived to find the season had collapsed 3 weeks early due to a late frost. Historians now trace one of the first organized migrant farm worker strikes in U.S. history to that specific failure of a single crop cycle. What happens when one variety disappears, economically, politically, has never been a trivial question. Albion contains measurable levels of ellagic acid, a polyphenol compound studied at the Hollings Cancer Center in Charleston, for its potential role in slowing the proliferation of certain cancer cell lines in vitro. The 2012 study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that Albion specifically had 34% higher ellagic acid concentration than Camarosa. The important caveat: in vitro results do not translate automatically to in vivo human benefit, and no clinical trial has confirmed therapeutic effect at dietary intake levels. If you buy Albion at a farmer's market, ask the grower whether it was picked that morning or the day before. Albion's sugar migrates toward the tip during the last 12 hours on the vine, which means a berry picked 6 hours ago tastes structurally different, less acidic at the tip, more complex, than the same variety picked 36 hours ago and trucked down the freeway. This is not a preference. It is a measurable Brix gradient, documented in UC Davis post-harvest trials. Albion's genetic parent line traces back to a wild Fragaria chilesensis specimen collected in Chile in the 1940s by USDA botanist Harold Thomas. That Chilean plant, growing in coastal sand dunes near Concepcion, is also the genetic source of the large berry size that defines every modern commercial strawberry sold in the United States. Every oversized strawberry you have ever eaten came, at least partially, from a weed someone dug out of a South American beach. The Commission called the flavor acceptable. The restaurants called it irreplaceable. Both were talking about money. Chandler. Chandler was the strawberry that made California, the strawberry capital of the world, and then the strawberry industry quietly retired it before anyone noticed. It defined what fresh strawberry meant for an entire generation of American consumers. The strawberry on the shortcake at every summer barbecue between 1983 and 1998. And today, it is grown on fewer than 400 acres nationwide, mostly by specialty growers who never told their customers they switched. Released by UC Davis in 1983, Chandler peaked at 31,000 planted acres in California. By 1991, roughly 70% of the state's total strawberry acreage at the time. It produced berries, averaging 28 to 32 grams each, with a Brix level of 8.5 to 9.2, which was considered the commercial sweet spot. Driscoll's, which licenses proprietary varieties to contract growers, began phasing Chandler out of its supply chain in the early 1990s, not because of flavor complaints, but because Chandler was a UC Davis public release, meaning any grower could plant it without paying a licensing fee. The company's internal shift toward proprietary varieties that growers must lease, at roughly $2,000 per acre annually, restructured the entire economics of strawberry farming in California. Chandler didn't disappear because consumers rejected it. It disappeared because it couldn't be monetized the same way. Chandler strawberries were served to U.S. troops during Operation Desert Storm in 1991. The military contracted with California growers for freeze-dried Chandler for field rations, making it, by sheer volume, the most consumed specific strawberry variety in any military operation in American history. The berry that soldiers ate while watching CNN broadcast the first Gulf War from their barracks was the same berry their families were buying at Safeway that summer. Chandler's signature flavor comes from a compound called furanol, also known as 2,5-dimethyl-4-hydroxy-3, 2H-furanone, which is the primary aroma molecule responsible for what scientists at the Montel Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia describe as the platonic strawberry smell. Research published in 2019 in the journal Food Chemistry measured furanol across 23 varieties and found Chandler consistently in the top 3, while several modern commercial varieties ranked at the bottom. The practical limitation: furanol degrades rapidly at temperatures above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why a Chandler berry left in a warm car smells like nothing within 2 hours. If you find Chandler at a specialty grower or U-Pick farm, they still exist in California's Watsonville area and parts of Oregon. Eat it the same day. Store it stem side down, in a single layer on paper towel, not in the plastic clamshell. Stacking Chandler berries accelerates bruising at a rate roughly 3x faster than firmer modern varieties, and a bruised Chandler loses its furanol content within 4 hours of cell wall damage. The word strawberry in English has nothing to do with straw, and nothing to do with how the plant grows. The most credible etymology traces it to the Old English strewbridge, meaning strewn berry, because the plant's runners spread across the ground in a strewn pattern. For 900 years, English speakers used a word meaning scattered to describe a fruit that grows in neat, managed rows. When Chandler changed that, its runners are unusually compact and easy to manage. No one updated the name. The most iconic American strawberry was a public asset. It is now a relic. Seascape? Seascape is the strawberry that growers recommend when they are not trying to impress you, and it is the reason why the category of day-neutral strawberry exists for home gardeners at all. It was released by UC Davis in 1992 as a deliberate compromise, a variety that would grow reliably in more climates than Chandler, but taste better than the yield-optimized varieties Driscoll's was developing in parallel. The compromise held. Seascape became the most planted day-neutral variety for small farms and home gardens across the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast. Seascape was registered in 1992 with USDA Plant Variety Protection Certificate number 920162. It produces fruit across a temperature range of 35 degrees Fahrenheit to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, wider than any other major variety at the time, and averages 18 to 24 grams per berry, about the size of a standard wine cork. The University of California's Intellectual Property Office holds the license on Seascape, and for most of its commercial life, growers paid a per-plant royalty of roughly 4 cents, compared to Driscoll's proprietary variety licenses, which run significantly higher per acre. Extension services across 23 states listed Seascape as a recommended variety in their small farm guides through the 2000s, not because it was the best tasting, but because it was the most reliable and the most affordable to plant without licensing risk. The institutional force here was not a corporation, but a public land-grant university system, optimizing for farmer adoption rate over consumer flavor experience. In the aftermath of the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake in the San Francisco Bay Area, Seascape strawberries grown in the Santa Cruz Mountains were among the first local agricultural products to return to market, within 11 days of the disaster. The USDA's 1990 Agricultural Recovery Report cited Santa Cruz County strawberry production as a model of rapid post-disaster agricultural resilience. A fruit that grows in compressed rows, picks without machinery, and sells without cold chain infrastructure turned out to be the crop you want when infrastructure collapses. Seascape has an unusually high ascorbic acid content, vitamin C, averaging 68 milligrams per 100 grams of fruit, compared to the average commercial strawberry's 58 milligrams. A 2003 analysis by the Linus Pauling Institute at Oregon State University confirmed Seascape in its top 5 list of commercially available high vitamin C berries. The practical uncertainty. Vitamin C content varies by as much as 40%, based on sun exposure in the 72 hours before harvest, meaning a Seascape grown in a cloudy week may have lower C content than an average Chandler grown in full sun. Full sun. Buy Seascape starts from a nursery rather than plants from a big box retailer. The difference is not branding, it is disease status. Nursery-certified Seascape starts carry a state phytosanitary certificate confirming freedom from strawberry crown rot, Phytophthora cactorum, and anthracnose, Colototrichum acutidum. Big box plants are not certified to the same standard. If you plant uncertified Seascape near any existing strawberry planting, you risk introducing crown rot to your entire bed within 1 season. Seascape strawberries contain a compound called pelargonidin-3 glucoside, the specific anthocyanin that gives red strawberries their color, and this compound is what cosmetic chemists use to study red pigment stability in skincare formulations. The strawberry extract listed in the ingredients of several luxury face serums, including products from a major French cosmetics house that charges $180 per 1-ounce bottle, is chemically derived from the same compound in the same fruit you can grow in a pot on your apartment balcony for $4. The public university built it for the farmers. The cosmetics industry monetized it for someone else. If you have ever bought strawberries at a farmer's market and wondered why they taste completely different from the grocery store, you now know exactly why, and it comes down to variety, not freshness. If this kind of information changes how you spend $4 on a pint of fruit, subscribe. Every video here is built to change a decision, not just fill time. Honeoye. Honeoye is the strawberry that the entire northeastern United States runs on, and almost no one outside of a 200-mile radius of Ithaca, New York has ever heard of it. It was bred by Cornell University in 1979, specifically for cold climate agriculture, the kind of climate where no California variety survives a January. And it became the dominant strawberry of New England, New York, Michigan, and Ontario, not because of marketing, but because nothing else lived through the winters. It is, by any honest measure, the strawberry that kept strawberry farming alive east of the Mississippi for 30 years. Cornell released Honeoye in 1979. It tolerates temperatures as low as -20 degrees Fahrenheit with snow cover, compared to Chandler's lower survival limit of approximately 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and produces fruit in a compressed 3-week June window that aligns precisely with pick-your-own-farm operations across the Northeast. Cornell's breeding program was funded through the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, with secondary funding from the New England Small Fruit Management Guide Consortium. The program's stated mandate was economic survival of small northeastern farms, not flavor optimization. Honeoye's flavor profile, notably more acidic and less aromatic than California varieties, was documented in Cornell's own 1981 release notes as appropriate for processing and fresh market in northeastern conditions. The institutional euphemism appropriate for processing means acceptable in jam, acceptable in frozen, acceptable on the shelf. The farm survived. The flavor was a secondary metric. The Iroquois Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee, cultivated and consumed wild Fragaria virginiana, the eastern wild strawberry that is Honeoye's direct genetic ancestor, as a ceremonial food for at least 400 years before European contact. The strawberry ceremony, observed in late June when wild berries first appeared, was one of the 6 major Thanksgiving ceremonies of the Haudenosaunee calendar. The domesticated Cornell hybrid that now grows in rows across New York State is a direct botanical descendant of the plant that fed a ceremony marking the beginning of summer for a civilization that had existed on that land for 1,000 years. Honeoye has a measurably high malic acid content, the same organic acid that gives green apples their tartness. A 2008 study from the University of Massachusetts Amherst measured organic acid profiles across 6 northeastern strawberry varieties and found Honeoye's malic to citric acid ratio to be the highest of any tested variety, at 1.41. This ratio is the scientific explanation for why northeastern strawberry jam tastes different from California strawberry jam, even when sugar content is identical. It is not imagination, it is acid chemistry. The limitation, acid profile shifts significantly based on soil pH, which varies farm to farm. If you are making jam with Honeoye, reduce your added lemon juice by half compared to what the standard pectin package recipe calls for. Honeoye's malic acid content means the standard recipe overshoots the pH target for gel formation. Your jam will set too firm and lose the fresh berry brightness that makes homemade jam worth making. Test with a small batch first. The flavor difference between a standard recipe and a malic acid-corrected batch is detectable by anyone, not just people who know the science. Honeoye's name comes from Honeoye Lake in Ontario County, New York, one of the Finger Lakes. The lake's name derives from the Seneca language, Honeoye, meaning finger lying there, a reference to the elongated shape of the Finger Lakes themselves. A strawberry named after a lake, named after a finger. The Seneca people who named that lake had been harvesting the wild ancestor of that strawberry from those shores for centuries before anyone planted it in a row. Cornell called the flavor appropriate. The Haudenosaunee called the ceremony sacred. The strawberry did not change between those two descriptions. Ozark Beauty. Ozark Beauty is the strawberry that home gardeners have been buying for 60 years because it says ever-bearing on the tag. And almost everyone misunderstands what that word means. It does not mean it bears continuously. It means it bears twice, once in June, once in September, with a 10-week gap in between during which it produces nothing. The name is optimistic at best, misleading at worst. And the strawberry industry has never bothered to correct it because the confusion drives consistent retail sales every spring. Ozark Beauty was introduced in 1955 by researcher E.M. Darrow at the USDA's Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. It reliably produces two distinct harvests, approximately 8 to 12 berries per plant in June, and 6 to 10 berries per plant in September, separated by a midsummer hiatus that the plant uses for runner production and energy storage. The label copy on Ozark Beauty at Home Depot and Lowe's, which together sell an estimated 18 million strawberry plants annually in the U.S., reads produces fruit all season, or equivalent language, depending on the retail year. The American Nursery and Landscape Association does not have a mandatory standard for what ever-bearing must mean on plant labeling. The result is that the term functions as marketing rather than agricultural description. Growers who know better have continued to sell the category under that name because June-bearing, the accurate alternative, does not sell as well in April when consumers are dreaming of continuous summer harvests. In the 1930s, during the Dust Bowl, Ozark Beauty's genetic predecessors, early ever-bearing varieties developed in the Ozark Mountain region of Arkansas and Missouri, were among the few food crops that could be grown successfully on smallholder plots with minimal irrigation. The September harvest, arriving after the brutal summer, was documented by Arkansas Extension Service county agents as a critical food security crop for families who had lost their primary crops to drought. The fall strawberry harvest was not a luxury. In certain years in certain counties, it was the harvest that determined whether a family had food in October. Ozark Beauty contains measurable levels of folic acid, approximately 24 micrograms per 100 grams, which is relevant to pregnant women because inadequate folate intake in the first trimester is associated with neural tube defects. The March of Dimes and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists both recommend dietary folate alongside supplementation. The nuance: strawberry folate is in its natural form, folate, while supplements use folic acid, a synthetic form that the body converts at a different rate. A 2016 review in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that food form folate has equivalent bioavailability to synthetic folic acid when consumed regularly, but the research specifically studied folate from multiple dietary sources, not strawberries in isolation. Plant Ozark Beauty in early spring in a spot that gets at least 8 hours of direct sun. In August, cut the runners aggressively. Every runner you allow to root pulls energy from the September fruiting cycle. Home gardeners who wonder why their fall harvest disappears after the second year almost always find the answer in unmanaged runners that have quietly converted their fruiting plant into a ground cover. The plant will not tell you it has made this trade. You have to enforce the deal. Ozark Beauty was developed at a federal agricultural research center that is now known primarily for other work. Almost no one under 40 has heard of the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. But in 1955, it was the most important agricultural science facility in the United States. The institution that invented the USDA meat grading system, the first artificial insemination protocols for cattle, and the Beltsville small white turkey, the turkey that replaced heritage breeds on American Thanksgiving tables so completely that by 1970, heritage breeds had nearly gone extinct. The institution that gave you your Thanksgiving turkey also gave you the strawberry in your spring garden. One federal research center quietly redesigned two of America's most emblematic seasonal foods, No one sent a press release. Tristar. Tristar is the strawberry that makes California garden writers embarrass themselves every spring, because they recommend it as the best-tasting home garden variety in print, and then it fails for 2/3 of the people who plant it, and no one explains why. Because the failure mode is almost never the plant, it is the soil. Tristar is extraordinarily sensitive to soil pH in a way that most garden guidance does not mention, and the gap between a Tristar that tastes extraordinary and a Tristar that tastes like nothing is a soil pH of 0.4. Released by USDA breeders in 1981, Tristar produces optimal flavor at soil pH between 5.8 and 6.2, dropped to 5.4, common in many Pacific Northwest soils, and sugar content decreases by approximately 18%. Climb to 6.5, typical of many Midwestern soils, and the berry becomes noticeably bland. The USDA Agricultural Research Service developed Tristar as part of the same ever-bearing breeding program that produced Ozark Beauty, but Tristar was specifically designed for higher elevation and cooler summer temperatures. The agency's release documentation cited superior flavor under ideal conditions, a qualifier that garden media consistently dropped when writing about the variety. By the time Tristar appeared in mainstream garden catalogs in the late 1980s, the conditional nature of its flavor superiority had been edited out of the marketing narrative entirely. Consumers bought a promise that was true only under conditions no catalog mentioned. In 1988, Tristar strawberries were included in the first-ever White House kitchen garden planting by the Reagan administration's executive residence horticulture staff, a fact uncovered in a National Archives request by food historian Kathy Barber in 2014. The garden was not public and was not publicized. It predates the Michelle Obama garden by 21 years. Tristar was chosen because it produced fruit across a longer window than any available June-bearing variety, meaning the kitchen had fresh strawberries from May through October, without managing multiple varieties. The first family had access to a supply chain solution unavailable to the public, grown in the ground 500 feet from the Oval Office. Tristar has a notably high pelargonidin content, the anthocyanin responsible for deep red color, and a 2014 Journal of Berry Research study found that Tristar maintained higher anthocyanin concentration than Albion or Seascape when grown in cooler temperatures below 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Anthocyanins are associated with reduced oxidative stress markers in human studies, though most clinical research has used berry extracts at concentrations significantly higher than dietary intake would provide. The gap between associated with and proven to cause in nutrition science is where most strawberry health claims live, and Tristar is no exception. Test your soil before planting Tristar. A basic soil test costs $15 to $25 through most county cooperative extension offices, the same land-grant university network that developed the variety in the first place. If your pH is above 6.2, amend with elemental sulfur at the rate your extension office recommends for your specific soil type, 6 to 8 weeks before planting. If your pH is below 5.8, add agricultural lime. This is not advanced gardening. It is the instruction that was left off every catalog page that ever sold you a Tristar. Tristar strawberries contain a compound called methyl anthranilate, the synthetic version of which is the artificial grape flavor used in purple popsicles, grape Kool-Aid, and grape Demetap. In natural strawberries, methyl anthranilate appears at concentrations too low to taste distinctly, but in Tristar, grown at the low end of its optimal pH range, it appears at concentrations high enough to be detectable as a distinct floral note. The artificial grape flavor you tasted as a child and the floral complexity of a perfectly grown Tristar are the same molecule, 40 years and one chemistry lab apart. The USDA built a strawberry with extraordinary potential and forgot to include the instructions. Jewel. Jewel is the strawberry that Cornell University built to save New York agriculture, and the strawberry that ultimately made New York one of the few states where a small strawberry farm can still turn a profit without a Driscoll's contract. It was released in 1985. It is still planted on more acres in New York than any other variety, and if you have eaten a strawberry shortcake at a farm stand anywhere within 2 hours of Albany, the odds that it was a Jewel are close to 70%. Cornell released Jewel in 1985 after 12 years of breeding work. It averages 22 to 28 grams per berry, comparable to Chandler, and has a shelf life of 3 to 4 days post-harvest, which is 24 hours longer than Honeoye under identical storage conditions. Cornell's breeding program for Jewel was explicitly funded to compete with the California variety pipeline, a fact documented in the program's 1983 progress reports, available through Cornell's Mann Library Digital Archive. The New York State Vegetable and Berry Growers Association lobbied the state legislature for continued funding on the grounds that without a competitive eastern variety, New York strawberry farmers would lose market share to California imports and be forced to exit production. The institutional logic was regional economic protection. The result was a public domain variety that any northeastern grower can plant for free, a direct structural counter to Driscoll's proprietary licensing model. Cornell's Jewel was, in part, an act of deliberate market resistance by a public university. In 1987, during the first wave of farm-to-table restaurant culture in New York City, Jewel strawberries appeared on the menu at the River Cafe in Brooklyn, sourced directly from a farm in the Hudson Valley. That sourcing decision, documented in the restaurant's archive and cited in a 2011 New York Times food history piece, is considered by several culinary historians to be among the first restaurant-scale commitments to a named regional berry variety in American fine dining. The Jewel strawberry on a 1987 Brooklyn menu is a direct predecessor of every locally sourced menu notation you have read in the last 20 years. Jewel's flavor complexity comes in part from its citric to malic acid ratio, roughly opposite to Honeoye's, giving it a brighter, more immediate tartness at first bite rather than a building acid finish. A 2010 analysis by Cornell's Food Science Department measured volatile aroma compounds in Jewel versus 6 competing northeastern varieties and found that Jewel produced the highest concentration of linalool, a floral terpene, of any measured variety. Linalool is also the primary aromatic compound in lavender and is used as a relaxation-associated fragrance in clinical aromatherapy settings. What makes Jewel smell like Jewel is the same molecule that aromatherapists put in diffusers. The calming effect of the lavender candle and the fresh complexity of a Jewel strawberry are the same chemistry expressed differently. When you buy Jewel at a New York farm stand, it is almost certainly June-bearing, which means it was picked that week in a 3-week window that will not come again until next year. Do not refrigerate it. Room temperature storage on a paper towel-lined plate maintains linalool concentration for approximately 36 hours. After that, the molecule degrades and you have a pleasant-tasting berry with no particular reason to be a Jewel. The timing is not sentimental. It is biochemistry. Jewel was designed, at the institutional level, as a political act. A public university used agricultural science to protect small farms from corporate consolidation. The berry worked, the farms survived, and most of the people eating Jewel shortcake at Hudson Valley farm stands have no idea that the strawberry on their plate was, in some sense, a policy decision. The free strawberry was a form of economic resistance. It still is. Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie is the strawberry that serious cold climate gardeners know by name, and everyone else has never encountered, because it was bred to grow where no commercial variety can survive, and it has never been commercially viable enough for a major catalog to promote aggressively. It was developed in Wyoming, named after a frontier fort, and it is the only major strawberry variety in the United States with a documented cold hardiness rating of USDA Zone 3, meaning it survives sustained temperatures of 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It exists because of a specific government decision in 1952 to breed a strawberry for the northern Great Plains, and it has been quietly keeping strawberries alive in North Dakota gardens ever since. Fort Laramie was released by the Wyoming Agricultural Experiment Station in 1952. It is rated for USDA hardiness zones 3 through 8, and has survived documented temperatures of -42 degrees Fahrenheit in Montana field trials conducted in 1961, temperatures at which virtually every other cultivated strawberry variety on Earth dies. The Wyoming Agricultural Experiment Station was funded by the Hatch Act of 1887, the same federal legislation that created the Cooperative Extension Service System that still operates today. The mandate was explicit: develop agricultural technology appropriate to local conditions, not replicate California. The Fort Laramie project was a direct implementation of that mandate in a state where commercial strawberry farming was economically marginal at best. The station published its variety development results in the public domain, received no licensing revenue, and essentially handed the variety to any grower who wanted it. Fort Laramie has never generated $1 of intellectual property income. It has generated 70 years of strawberries in places where no one thought strawberries could grow. Fort Laramie the strawberry is named after Fort Laramie the military installation, which was the site of the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851, one of the most significant and most violated treaties between the U.S. government and the Plains tribes, including the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho nations. The treaty established territorial boundaries that were formally abandoned within 3 years of signing. A strawberry bred for the land those boundaries once described was named after the place where the promise to protect that land was made and broken. The naming was not intentional commentary. It does not need to be. Fort Laramie has a notably high concentration of quercetin, a flavonoid found across many berries, but present at approximately 4.2 milligrams per 100 grams in Fort Laramie, compared to a commercial average of 2.1 milligrams. Quercetin is studied at the Mayo Clinic and elsewhere for potential antihistamine and anti-inflammatory properties. A 2021 review in the journal Nutrients found consistent evidence that quercetin at dietary intake levels has measurable anti-inflammatory effects in human subjects, though the review authors noted that most positive studies used quercetin concentrations achievable through supplements, not food alone. Fort Laramie is not a medicine, but it is measurably different from a Driscoll's clamshell. Plant Fort Laramie in raised beds if your native soil drains poorly. The variety is cold hardy but not waterlogged hardy, and crown rot in wet spring soil will kill it as reliably as it kills anything else. In Zone 3 and 4 conditions, mulch with 4 to 6 inches of straw after the ground freezes in November. Do not mulch before the ground freezes. An early mulch insulates the soil from freezing and can create the exact temperature conditions that promote fungal crown disease. The timing matters. 4 inches of straw applied 2 weeks too early is not protection. It is an incubator. Fort Laramie's cold hardiness comes from an antifreeze protein mechanism that plant physiologists at the University of Minnesota first documented in 1998. A protein that binds to ice crystals as they form and prevents them from growing large enough to rupture cell walls. This is the same mechanism used by Arctic fish like the Antarctic toothfish, which survive waters below 28 degrees Fahrenheit using antifreeze proteins that function identically at the molecular level. The strawberry bred for a Wyoming winter and the fish swimming under Antarctic ice solved the same problem in the same way, without ever sharing a taxonomy, a continent, or a biome. Evolution found the same answer twice, 8,000 miles apart. White Soul, pineapple strawberry. Strawberry. White Soul is the strawberry that confuses people because it looks wrong, and then it tastes like something they cannot identify, and then someone tells them it tastes like pineapple, and they agree even though they would not have said that themselves. It is an alpine strawberry variety, Fragaria vesca, which means it is a different species from every other strawberry on this list. It produces fruit the size of a blueberry, and it has been grown in European monastery gardens since at least the 13th century. It arrived in the United States as a novelty, and it has remained one, which is a loss, because it is the closest thing to the flavor that the word strawberry, once described before breeding, made the word mean something else. White Soul berries average 3 to 5 grams, roughly 1/7 the weight of an Albion, and contain 0 surface achenes, seeds, which means they are consumed whole with a texture entirely different from any red commercial variety. They are Fragaria vesca var. Florens, a subspecies documented continuously in European botanical literature, from Pietro Andrea Mattioli's 1544 herbal through the current EU plant variety register. White Soul and alpine strawberries generally entered the American food consciousness through a very specific institutional channel, the Alice Waters-led California cuisine movement, specifically through the Chez Panisse Kitchen Garden established in the late 1970s. The Edible Schoolyard Project, Waters' educational initiative, included White Soul and similar alpine varieties in its curriculum guides from 2000 onward, introducing the berry to a generation of American food educators. The commercial market for White Soul in the U.S. is tiny. A 2020 USDA Specialty Crop Survey did not list it as a trackable production category, meaning it exists almost entirely in home gardens and in the menus of the kind of restaurants that name the farm on the menu. The institutional gatekeepers of this strawberry are food educators, not grocers. Medieval European monastery gardens maintained white strawberry cultivation continuously from approximately the 12th century through the Reformation. At Hildegard von Bingen's monastery in the Rhineland, where she wrote Physica, the first systematic botanical medicinal text by a European woman, in approximately 1150, white strawberries were recorded as a medicinal plant prescribed for liver complaints. Whether that prescription had pharmacological basis is unknown. The plant survived regardless. A berry being grown in a 12th century German monastery is genetically continuous with the same berry you can order from a seed catalog in 2026 for $3.50. White Soul's white color is the result of a specific absence. It lacks the receptor protein Fra, a 1-, the same protein that triggers strawberry allergies in most allergic individuals. A 2013 study published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology found that approximately 85% of people with IgE-mediated strawberry allergies could eat white strawberries without triggering symptoms. The research was conducted at the University Medical Center in Erlangen, Germany, and the sample size was 23 patients, a small study. Larger confirmatory research has not been funded, in part because White Soul has no commercial sponsor, with incentive to prove its allergenicity profile. The finding is real, but remains under-confirmed. Grow White Soul from seed in a container and bring it indoors in winter. It is a short-lived perennial that returns for 3 to 5 years with proper care. The key practical point: White Soul runners are minimal, so it will not spread aggressively the way June-bearing varieties do. One plant produces approximately 150 berries per season at peak, small enough to eat in a single handful, consistently. This is not a yield play. This is a flavor play. The flavor compound that makes White Soul taste like pineapple is 4-methoxy-2, 5-dimethyl-3, 2H-furanone, a molecule structurally related to furaniol, the compound responsible for classic red strawberry aroma, but with a methoxy group substituted at a specific carbon position. One oxygen atom in a different place is the entire chemical difference between smells like strawberry and smells like pineapple. Organic chemistry contains the explanation for a sensory experience that has confused people for 800 years. The monks grew it because it healed something. We grow it because it tastes like something else. Neither group grew it because a corporation told them to. Camarosa. Camarosa is the strawberry that ran California from 1992 to 2005, with more market dominance than any variety before or since, and the strawberry that current food scientists point to when they want to explain how the industry optimized flavor out of commercial berries while telling consumers it was improving them. It produced more fruit per acre than anything available. It shipped better. It held shelf life. And it tasted like what strawberries taste like when the goal is logistics, not flavor. Camarosa did not fail. It succeeded completely. That is the problem. UC Davis released Camarosa in 1992 after trials showing it yielded approximately 40% more fruit per acre than Chandler, producing 4.2 pounds per plant per season versus Chandler's 3.0, and with a shelf life of 7 days post-harvest versus Chandler's 4 to 5. The California Strawberry Commission championed Camarosa's adoption through a grower education program that ran from 1993 to 1999, training approximately 1,200 California growers in Camarosa-specific crop management. The commission is funded by a mandatory per-flat assessment on all California strawberry growers, meaning growers who preferred other varieties were taxed to fund marketing for a variety they had not chosen. The Commission's 1998 annual report showed that Camarosa had reached 60% of California strawberry acreage within 6 years of release, the fastest adoption rate of any California variety in history. The economic logic was inarguable. The flavor question was not in the report. In 1994, Camarosa strawberries were served at the White House State Dinner for South African President Nelson Mandela, his first state visit to the United States after the end of apartheid. The strawberries were identified specifically in the menu card archived at the Clinton Presidential Library. The most commercially dominant strawberry of its era was served to one of the most significant political figures of the 20th century at one of the most symbolically charged diplomatic events of the decade. Mandela ate a Camarosa. Camarosa's Brix level, the measure of dissolved sugar content, averaged 7.2-inch commercial field conditions, compared to Chandler's 8.5 to 9.2 and Joule's 9.0 to 10.5. A 2021 UC Davis metabolomics study that compared the full flavor compound profile of Camarosa against 22 other varieties found it in the bottom quartile for furaniol concentration, the compound most closely associated with what human subjects rate as strongest strawberry flavor. The same study found Camarosa in the top quartile for firmness and visual appeal. The strawberry that dominated 2 decades of American retail was, by measurable chemistry, not a particularly good-tasting strawberry. It was a good-looking, good-shipping, high-yielding agricultural product that happened to be red and vaguely sweet. At the grocery store, Camarosa, or its successors bred from the same Camarosa stock, is what fills most clamshells that are not labeled by variety. If you want to taste the difference, find a Joule or a Chandler at a farm stand and eat it side by side with anything from a plastic clamshell. The comparison is not subtle. You will taste what 30 years of yield optimization tastes like. Camarosa's name comes from Camarosa Ranch in Santa Barbara County, a piece of California land with no particular relationship to strawberry history. The naming was a convention of the UC Davis breeding program, which named varieties after California place names, Chandler for Chandler, Arizona, a geographic error the program apparently never corrected, Camarosa for a ranch, Albion for the Old English name for Britain, used in California road and ranch naming in the 19th century. The most commercially dominant strawberry in American history was named after a ranch no one outside Santa Barbara has heard of. Somewhere, there is a plot of California land that has no idea it is responsible for naming the berry that shaped American grocery shopping for a generation. The logistics won, they always do. The question is, what they won against. The next video covers something most people assume has been true about one common vegetable their entire lives, and it turns out the opposite has been true, since at least 1974, confirmed by a study that the USDA funded, and then never incorporated into public dietary guidance. The question is why? Subscribe and you will have the answer before the people who have been telling you to eat your vegetables for 30 years do. The strawberry you buy at the grocery store and the one your grandparents grew up eating are measurably different fruits, not just in freshness, but in flavor chemistry. Is that a trade-off worth making? Or did the industry take something we didn't agree to give? Every type of strawberry is not interchangeable. The variety determines the flavor chemistry. The flavor chemistry determines the experience. And the experience determines whether you think you like strawberries or whether you just think you do. The right answer to which strawberry is best depends on your climate, your soil pH, your storage capacity, and whether you are optimizing for your own palate or for a supply chain that has nothing to do with you. Every strawberry on this list follows the same pattern. A public institution bred something good. A private interest optimized it for something else. And the consumer ended up with a product described in the language of improvement that was actually a substitution. The USDA bred for the farm, Cornell bred for the region, UC Davis bred for the market, and Driscoll's bred for the shelf. The strawberry that arrives in a plastic clamshell is not a failure. It is the intended outcome of a system that was never designed to ask whether it tasted like a strawberry. That system still runs. Most of what you eat is still its output. Hildegard von Bingen, 12th century abbess, composer, and the first European woman to publish a systematic text on medicinal plants, grew white strawberries in her monastery garden in the Rhineland. Not because she had a clinical trial, not because she had a supply chain, but because she tasted them, noticed what they did, and kept growing them for 40 years. She did not have a yield target, she had a garden and a long attention span. The berry she grew is still available, still grows the same way, and still tastes like pineapple. She got there first by doing the one thing the modern strawberry industry has structurally eliminated, paying attention to flavor for its own sake. Next time you are at a farmer's market, ask the grower the variety by name, not, are these sweet? That is a logistics question. Ask for the variety name and look it up before you buy. If they cannot name it, that is information too. The system that optimized flavor out of your food depends on you not asking. Start asking.